And it's not the willingness to let go of the positionality, because you're all intellectual enough in this audience at 4:30 to, the intellect instantly sees it. A positionality is a falsehood. The difference between hot and cold, as you can see, is an artificial positionality. So your intellect sees it, but no, the problem's going to be emotional, that you get grim satisfaction out of everything. Grim satisfaction out of martyrdom, out of being wronged. The more horribly you're wronged, let me tell you, the bigger the juice. The more horrible the crime committed against you, the more stuck you are in your ego now. Because the payoff is big. The payoff gets bigger and bigger. And as you evolve spiritually, the tempter is going to come to you, and the way the tempter comes to you is offering an enormous gratification of a justified position. At a certain consciousness level, the tempter comes to you. You might say that which we call, quote, the tempter, and the quote, is present at all times, and you're really constantly under the test of the tempter, if you want to call it that. What's the source of the tempter? The source of the tempter then is the pleasure one derives out of one's ego positionalities. It isn't power over others, it's the gratification you get out of power over others. What the hell do these idiots who slaughter millions get out of it? You don't even get to see it, right? Hey, there's millions of people being slaughtered and chopped up out there, and you don't even get to see it. You're locked up in your office here. Look what you're missing. Get out there and slosh around in the blood and step over the bodies. I mean, you're missing the grim satanic satisfaction. No, the satisfaction he's getting out of it is luciferic, not satanic. Satanic is the expression, but what he's coming out of is power over others, the capacity to be God over others. That's Milosevic. Look at him on TV. Huh? The pridefulness of that positionality is what he's unwilling to relinquish to God. Yeah, and that's how you choose the lower astral positionality. All right, so you'll catch the ego red-handed. You'll see that it gets a grim. You'll say, "Oh, I can't possibly be enjoying the suffering." No, you're not enjoying the suffering. You're enjoying the juice you're getting out of the suffering. You get what I'm saying by juice? The ego feeds off the juice that it gets out of what otherwise, at least to the intellect, is described as negative. No sooner is the town demolished by the flowing lava than they're rebuilding a new one exactly in the same place. Is that right? No sooner does the house slide down the side of the mountain into the Pacific Ocean than they're building a new one. Exactly the same place. No sooner do the rivers flow over the banks in the Midwest and sweep millions of houses away, they're instantly building houses as soon as the mud dries. The ego's attraction and addiction is to the juice it gets out of suffering and being mistreated. That's the juice of the far left political liberal politically correct position, is you can get juice out of any social reality by recontextualing it. Why? Because the egotism involved brings you to a position called entitlement. Once you're entitled, everything is an offense. Everything is an offense. Everything is a possible lawsuit. Everything is publicity. Because entitlement then is the grandiosity of the ego of the infant. So, egomania is nothing but the grandiosity of the unbridled infant of the ego, expecting the world to acknowledge it. The king baby inside expects the world to cater to its egocentric position. Well, the world never heard of you, and after you've left, it's not going to miss you. And the idea that it's going to cater to you while you're here is about a 3-month-old positionality. But the juice that's derived out of the indignities and injustices of this world, it thrives on it. All the people that are rude to you. Now, sooner do they catch this crazy butcher of 30 people who chops them up, and I wouldn't even tell you it's unspeakable what he did to the remnants of their bodies. No sooner does this happen than some poppycock jumps up on TV. He's worried about the civil rights of this sucker, right? Right. Why? Because he can milk injustice out of this. You can see the position of the winner is always the bad guy. Like the capitalist is always the bad guy, right? Who says that? A guy wearing clothes? Yes. Where did you get your clothes? Well, it's manufactured by some company. Where did the company get its money? It got it from capital, didn't it? You're walking on a sidewalk. Who made that sidewalk? Some company made the sidewalk. You sit in a car. Who made your car? You open your bottle of milk in the morning. Where'd you get the milk? You got it from some company. Where'd you get the money to buy all these things that the people you hate provided for you? Well, you got it from the people who you hate, because they provided the jobs, right? So you see how positionality makes everything wrong. You know, you can make the goose who lays the golden egg the bad guy. So positionality, swinging back and forth, then creates the political spectrum which keeps us entertained. Everybody, all the guys in the restaurant in the morning look forward to opening the editorial page. You know, they're all set. They go, you know, what's today's outrageous calamity that you can really discuss with the other guys, and how stupid the government is and all. So we love, when you're honest about it, you see that you love your ego. You love the juice you get out of your ego. See, once you admit that truth, you've taken the cover off of it. You love the ego. It's your source of juice. It's the source of all the injustices, the calamities, the pains, the hatreds. Where would you be without it? You'd be stuck with the reality of the self, which doesn't buy that crap. Doesn't buy it at all. Give me a break. That's what God says when you say, what do you got to say today, God? Give me a break. Give me a break. Enough of all this human juice. Take away the TV set. I looked at it, and you can have it back. I gave God a TV set, and he said, I don't want to look at it anymore. It's horrible. Why? Because it's full of all this juice that we get out of it. The movies juice you to death, you know? If you calibrate a lot of commercials, TV commercials, and a lot of movies, you know, your mind will go weak about 14 times a minute. Why? Because we love the fear, we love the indignation, we love the shock. So the way to undo the ego then is radical honesty. The way of Advaita is radical truth. The willingness to let go all illusions, including the illusions about illusions. The source of the ego then is the juice that we continuously get out of it, which pumps it up, pumps it up, pumps it up, gives it life. The willingness to relinquish that, that's what you have to surrender to God. Not the positionality, because the minute you let go, the secondary gain you're getting out of that position, ego, the positionality will disappear of itself. You'll laugh at it. It will let go of itself. So the thing to search for is, what kind of satisfaction do I get out of that? I get the satisfaction of being wronged. Wronged is wonderful, isn't it? Whole countries go to war and they're wronged. They're righting the wrong of Versailles. What wrong of Versailles? The Kaiser did the same thing Hitler did and lost. Now Hitler says, well, that was an injustice. What injustice? Nobody asked the Kaiser to invade Europe and kill people, did they? No. All right, so it feeds off that injustice. The whole German people, 40 million people died in World War II. I was in World War II, and it's more of a reality to me than many younger people. It was a reality in which 70 million people died out of the juice of being wronged. That was the juice of the National Socialist Party, wasn't it? It was going to right the wrong of Versailles. And that justified everything they did. Just as bin Laden tries to juice, it's justified for the have-nots to hate the haves. That's the ostensible politicalization of it. Bin Laden is not a have-not, he's a multimillionaire. Which tends to diminish one's credence in that positionality. All right, the pleasure that one gets out of the juice of the ego justifies everything. It justifies mass murder, genocide. If allowed to, the final killer bomb, if they lost the war, the final killer bomb was big enough to eliminate all of mankind. All of mankind was going to be eliminated by the final killer bomb if Russia lost a nuclear war with the United States. Luckily, there were enough Russians to stop it before it became a reality, but the megalomania behind it, as you see, is unstoppable. The difficulty with the reasonable ego of the Western world is it presumes that other people are going to operate with the lawful confines and reasonableness of the ego. Other people are not. Other people totally disregard. People say, well, he wouldn't do that. It would cost them all his countrymen. Oh, of course he'd do that. In fact, that he cost them all his countrymen is cool, man. Kill them all. So the weakness of our position, as you see it in the world, is the presumption by the naive that other people are going to be ruled by reason. People in this room are the ones who are most vulnerable to that. The 400s is the level of reason. We say, well, nobody would do that. That's irrational. Why, there's lots of people in the world that think that rationality is stupid. If you want something, you take it, man. What's the problem? There's whole cultures. And you know how that culture thinks? Well, she left her purse there, so she deserves it. I treat them all week long, Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. Well, she deserves, she left her purse there. Of course I stole it. Well, what do you expect? I mean, you're talking about a different reality, right? Different rules apply. If I can get away with it, they deserved it, is a justification. In the 400s, you don't buy that, but down in the lower part of the world, that's justified. They deserve to die because they're killable. Whoa, realize what that means when people come from that space? Because they're killable, that's why they deserve to die. The dinosaur doesn't need justification to eat the smaller animals. He kills it because it's chewable, I guess. Oh. All right, so now you understand a little bit more about the ego. You don't have to be afraid of it. You have to be honest that it's there and that it owes its survival to the payoff it gets out of its positions. The payoff, the way to get rid of it is first be honest about it and admit it. Yeah, I enjoy whatever. Huh? Now, am I willing to let that enjoyment go for some higher purpose? Well, you can only take the word of people who have done so, whether the sacrifice is worth it. Because it does seem to the ego to sacrifice all of that glory and fame and justification and revenge and all is a big sacrifice. Don't kid yourself. To the ego, it is a big sacrifice. It is a big sacrifice to let go of being right, to let go, not nurturing that wrong, to let go of that hatred. It is a big sacrifice. Don't pretend it's a small sacrifice. There's a lot of pseudo, non-genuine spiritual work that people attempt, and it doesn't work. Why? Because they're unwilling to face the nitty-gritty facts. Radical truth means you got to take the mask off everything and be willing to see it for what it is, and now handle it from the viewpoint of emotional honesty. There is a big, massive payoff in ego positions, or you wouldn't be sitting here in a body today. You would have karmically gone off into the mists of the higher realms. And therefore, the fact that one is back here in a body again means that one has sold out spiritual truth for the gratifications of the ego over and over again. But in this lifetime, it's coming up to be questioned. In this lifetime, you say, was it worth it? Is the experience of the presence of God worth sacrificing all that I get out of my ego? The answer can only be gotten by faith, actually. Experientially, no. Experientially, you got nothing upon which to say that giving it up would be a better deal. Anything in your experience telling you that giving up the pleasure, resentments, and hatreds and satisfactions of winning is worth it? Not experientially, no. Faith, yes, based on faith, based on the teaching of some entity who's gone through the whole trip and tells you that the end result, the experience of God, is so incredible beyond all description, so beyond the totality of all the values of all of mankind throughout of all of history. All the pleasures and all the values and all the acquisitions emotionally and materially of all of mankind throughout all of history are like a speck compared to the presence of God. Nothing is even in the same domain. Therefore, you're asked to sacrifice that with which you're familiar in the hopes of entering a different domain, and in that domain you only have the traveler who's been there. Marco Polo tells you what the Chinese are like, but you have to take his word for it. So we have the inspiration then of the spiritual teacher. The value of the guru is primarily one of commitment to absolute truth, out of which comes an integrity which is so profound and convincing that one buys that integrity. You see, truth cannot be argued, it cannot be defended, and it has no answers for any argument. Its authority is absolute. It is the absoluteness of the presence that defies any question, and against which any question falls flat, because there is no room for question. That which is all that is beyond all questioning. To let go and surrender the known for the unknown. We call it the Institute for Advanced Spiritual Research. Every spiritual aspirant is a researcher. You have no idea what you're really going to experience when you let a certain thing go. You only find it by doing it. You only find it by doing it. Just like the explorer. You can go by the compass, but you don't really know till you get there that that's an absolute fact. So each one of us evolves based on faith, the faith of the conviction of the integrity of whatever spiritual teacher or church or spiritual tradition, whatever guru, whatever. One's inner direction leads one to that which you're able to hang on to with absolute certainty. When I was an atheist, I already got the absolute certainty of the truth of the Buddha. Yeah, I was an atheist at the time, and I knew that what he said was absolutely so. So the intuitive knowingness was there many years prior to the validation experientially. All right. That leads us up to the next topic, which we'll discuss after lunch because it's a heavy one, and I don't want you to be hungry when we talk about it. We want to explore what part does karma play in all this, huh? Because the ego, the mechanisms of the ego, the positionalities, what we calibrate as of today as a group, and the kind of things we talk about and are valid to us today, to avoid the whole subject of karma is, again, the fallacy of many religious positions who say, I don't believe in karma. I don't want anybody to believe in karma at all. I don't want anybody to believe in karma. I don't believe in karma. Karma is what you are. You ask, how do you let go of the ego? Well, the ego is the accumulated karma of all of life, through all of time, through all of history, as it presents itself now in the reality of that which you are at this moment. Somebody says, I don't believe in karma. They tell you, then in that case, you don't exist because you got 2 ears, 2 eyes, and a nose and a mouth. If that ain't karmic, what is it? I mean, you didn't come up with 4 ears and 3 eyes and 2 mouths, you know? So obviously, this moment then represents the accumulated energies and effects in form throughout all of time. You can't pretend that somehow the evolution of consciousness throughout all of time and throughout all forms of life has somehow bypassed you and you have magically escaped karma. No way. That's a spiritual pride to think that one is not subject to the laws of the universe. One time, and then we'll have lunch, one time in a very advanced state, it was a very, very advanced state, came the potential downfall of the guru. A lot of gurus fall down. At the pass was over 800, 820, 840, 860, 850, around 850. All right, so it's another shocking fact. You see, to be a radical realist takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of guts and it takes a lot of heart. You got to face radical facts about things you don't want to face. Many well-known gurus, if you calibrate their writings, they're pretty good. And if you calibrate where they were at the height of their spiritual evolution, you get a very good number. And if you ask where they are at now, you may get a very low number. Shock. Because at each point along the way, it's like a test comes up that says, oh yeah? And the students I teach, I want them prepared for that. First of all, don't pretend it's not going to happen, because it's going to happen. When you say, I'm never going to so-and-so again, the next question that comes up in the universe is, oh yeah? Oh yeah? Uh-huh. Yeah, sure. Anyway, this was a very advanced state, and it was a state of absolute purity and profound state of the presence as clarity, peace, and non-positionality. Anyway, in this state, which was non-verbal, because thought had stopped years before that, came a knowingness, presented itself. The knowingness was, now that you have transcended karma and are no longer answerable to some otherness called God, and you realize there is no otherness to which you are answerable for, and because you realize you're beyond all human karma, you're not answerable in human terms. All power resides in you. Own it. That was the temptation. The ultimate Luciferic. Power for its own sake. And the rationale was correct up to a certain level. when you truly transcend the ego, you're not subject to human karma in normal human karmic terms, nor is there some angry God that you're going to face who's going to get even with you for being bad and beat you up and throw you into hell. All that's bullshit. So anyway, you've transcended all that. Now, knowing all that, how about this, baby? You are the power. There comes the Luciferic temptation. And you could see who had said yes and who had said no. It was strange. Not all that many had been through, and you could see who said yes and who said no. Power for its own sake. You say to yourself, why would that which is called, we call evil by the world's terms, why would it choose to be that way? It does it for the payoff, for the sake of power itself. Not because the power gets you something, but for its own sake. Just as people will murder, not for some motive, looking for psychological reasons why the thrill killer kills is really absurd. Got beat up in his childhood. Yeah, right. Everybody got beat up in his childhood. Now, he does it for the sake of it itself. He murders for the sake of the thrill of murdering. All right, so the payoff, the way we surrender the ego then is we're radically honest. We're radically honest. We see the payoff we get out of it. We're radically honest about whether we're actually willing to give up that payoff for something promised but not yet experienced, because that takes faith. Huh? All right, so that sort of answers some of the questions that came up. And we will talk more about karma because there are questions there about it. What is it really? How far does it go? You see, the error that was made by that Luciferic energy at that level was, it's true, you're beyond the karma of the ego, but you are not beyond the karma of the reality of the universe. You're not beyond the reality of the karma of God, of the reality of the universe, which is far beyond the human, and includes you in it, brother. So if I'd known what to say to that entity at the time, I would have turned on him and say, and that includes you, brother, unless you're greater than the infinite reality of the infinite creator of universes out of which your little silliness arose. Anyway, so those are some things that happen to you, and it's pertinent to karma, and we'll talk more about karma later. Chocolate-covered karma. Thank you. We'll reconvene at 1 o'clock, huh? Speak.
Yeah, how do you not revert?
Revert?
Yeah.
And become a reverter? We don't allow reverters in this audience, sir.
No, you tend to be conscious.
Well, many things are let go of in degrees, you see. Degrees. And you have the accumulated pressure of many lifetimes behind many things. So it's more than just a passing thought sometimes. It takes very intense intention and devotion and the miraculous to let it go. And that's why prayer, the request for intercession is traditional. To ask God for help to let go my addiction to the pleasure I'm getting out of such and such a thing, see? So we ask for divine help. That is the pathway of devotion, huh? So today we're talking about, to start with, the pathway of mind, but we, as the day goes on, lapse more into the pathway of devotion. I'll leave devotion until late in the afternoon. You start with devotion, that's the end of the project. So, because the energy of it comes up and it wipes out everything. So, it was severe I had trouble with it for a long time. And I'd sit in an airport and one couple would look at each other, look a glance of love, and it would just wipe me out. Tears would come up and I was just shot. The bliss state, you get to be mother so-and-so. You just sit there in a state of bliss, and you can't really say anything. And you just bless people, wish them well, because verbalization is not possible in that divine state of bliss. To understand spiritual work, it's necessary to know something about karma and what is the truth of karma, what does it really mean. First of all, it's somewhat stigmatized amongst Christian circles and others as being of Eastern origin and therefore foreign and all this and that. Karma as a specific religious concept, of course, is defined in the dictionary in a very specific way. Karma, in my understanding, is more the essence of karma, in that all that is, the entire universe, in fact, all the universes of universes, is one karmic totality, one karmic symphony. In other words, all that ever existed, all that ever is in thought, word, or deed, in both the linear and the nonlinear domains, are part of a total oneness. To be beyond karma would mean that somehow you've escaped the oneness of the totality of God and all the universes, which is not likely. The universe is one karmic unity, in perfect and total balance in every detail. All that is obviously part of the evolution of all that was, at the point of observation becoming the fulfillment of its innate propensity, which was created as part of creation. Everything is perfect because at every point it is fulfilling its potentiality as it is possible for that potentiality to unfold under the conditions that we call the present. In the next instant, it will again be perfect. So all is perfect at every instant. The only way to make it not perfect is to contextualize it in the hypothetical. But because the hypothetical has no reality, it does not invalidate the truth of what was just said. The hypothetical does not exist. So because the universe is one karmic unity in a continuous state of perfection of the unfolding of its potentiality, nothing can escape karma and still be part of the universe. So if anything was beyond karma, you wouldn't know about it. There's no point to worry about it because it wouldn't exist, neither would you. So you cannot be anything this instant unless you were something the last instant, right? Okay. How does it operate really spiritually speaking? First of all, the confusion has to do with confusing karma with reincarnation. The reason it's rejected by Christian belief systems is because of two things: that Jesus Christ did not talk about it, and specifically, it's referring to embodiment. Generally, karma is understood by the common layman as if you're not good, you'll become back as a toad, or you were a very good toad and now you're not a toad anymore. So it's confused with incarnation. Karma and incarnation are two different things. Reincarnation can be a karmic potentiality, or it may not. Karma is merely stating that which is continuous and part of an ongoing oneness. What it's really saying spiritually is that the decisions of the spiritual will, which is really what determines karma in the true meaning of the sense, the decisions of the spiritual will then have consequences. These consequences are agreed upon by all religions. Those who claim they don't believe in karma, of course they believe in karma. Otherwise, why would you avoid sin? Because after you die, karmically, you're going to go to other places. So they all believe in karma, but they don't believe in reincarnation. That's two different things. Karma means that the consequences of actions will have an effect in the future. And of course, Christ taught that. You reap as you sow, etc. So he taught karma, but he did not get into the whole problem of embodiment. Karmically, embodiment is a very complicated and tricky question. It may or may not occur, and it may or not be an option, and it may or may not be said yes to. The other thing that people don't understand about karma is that there's an infinite number of universes. There's an infinite number of domains, and within an infinite number of domains, there's an infinite potentiality of infinite universes, and these multiply at an infinite rate. Now, once you wrap yourself around that one, I want to ask a question that's been bugging me. May I ask this question? I may ask this question. He says, Jesus Christ never had any previous physical incarnations. I may ask that, resist. That is a fact, resist. The Buddha did, resist. That's what I thought. I was driving along the other day, and I thought one reason Jesus Christ didn't talk about previous embodiments is because he never had any. The Buddha, however, did. And at about level 600, you recall them. Not that they're a different lifetime, but it's just like a memory, like you remember what your teacher said in 8th grade. So Jesus Christ, first of all, came directly from heaven, see? Never incarnated as a physicality, as a human physicality. Jesus Christ never incarnated as a physicality before, resist. Yeah, I didn't know that. Well, that's one thing I like about kinesiology. You ask these questions, and after you've asked thousands of them, it weaves a fabric of understanding that is greater in depth and dimension and subtlety than can be usually described. I always thought, until this moment, that Jesus Christ didn't go into the subject of karma specifically, past life karma, is because the ego as it is today is the karma. Your karma is today's ego. Today's ego is the compilation of all that's occurred in the evolution of this consciousness up to this moment, just like a tomato is. This tomato sitting here represents the evolution of tomato-ness throughout all of time until it is manifesting as this tomato. There's no way this tomato can escape tomato karma because it is tomato karma, all right? So the ego of today is nothing but the crystallization and manifestation in this lifetime of all that has been accumulated since the beginning of time by this particular consciousness. And because they're one and the same, I thought Jesus Christ understanding, seeing that equality, there's no point of talking about past lives and confusing people, because at the time that he incarnated, in the culture in which he incarnated, it would have been another excuse to reject his teaching as outlandish, because in traditional Judaism, past lives is not taught. So he would have been more out of gear with his society in which he got himself born. The Buddha, on the other hand, not only recalled them and but also taught in a society in which that was common knowledge. That's that's common knowledge in the Far East and in India, that one has had numerous incarnations and hopefully up the evolutionary tree. And all right, so then we'd say that every act of the will, every ascent of the spiritual will is reflected in one's spiritual, the vibrational energy field called the soul. Yeah? Now, this influences, let's see if what we just said is so. Yeah? We're going to check everything out. All right. That so is it. Thank you. You see, I don't care whether it's so or not. People, there's usually get a question, how do you know that what you're doing is scientifically accurate? I don't frankly care. I'm not, I really don't care, nor do I care if people are unable to do it or disbelieve in it. It's just a tool, you understand what I'm saying? But it's an extremely informational tool, extremely informational, pretty much like a compass, you know, and to navigate without a compass is where mankind has been. Mankind has been unable to know truth from falsehood. The inability to know truth from falsehood is why the millions get slaughtered generation after generation. One incredible monster after another slaughters more millions, and they never lack for followers. Huh? We can say that somehow they never lack for followers. No matter how insane you are in this world, you'll get followers. Yesterday's paper was full of a couple of crazinesses. What was it yesterday? Some spiritual group in Wisconsin is threatening all the morticians because they don't believe in embalming the body. Oh, well, okay. And the next page, somebody was threatening birth control places. The next page was a picture of protesters in India who were protesting Valentine's Day. Because it's immoral to display affection in public. So anyway, you take your pick of insanity. So the only point I'm mentioning is that any kind of insanity never lacks for followers. And if you want to kill all the white people on the planet, you can find lots of non-white people who will join you. And if you want to kill all the black people, you can find lots of white people who will join you. No matter how bizarre it is, you'll find endless followers, you know. I'm thinking of bin Laden telling all these people that their duty is to kill all Americans and non-Islamics, you know. And then I'm thinking, well, he succeeded. He killed off 3,000, and he's only got 285 million to go. He kills off another 285 million, he might be in the winning, but I don't think he will because people propagate faster than that, so he can't kill them off as fast as they even propagate. So, you know, you'd say, this is total insanity. Even if they were right, they're wrong, huh? So, all right, so the karmic situation then, we just want to confirm this so everybody can witness, that one's karmic position is determined by the agreement of the spiritual will, resist. All right, so it's the spiritual will then. The spiritual will which determines one's karma, that which you spiritually intend to be the result is what determines one's karmic fate. How does the karma operate then? And how can you say that the justice of God is absolute? It's obvious when you go into a certain state. It's a condition. Enlightenment is a condition. It's a what kind of condition would you call it? It's a paradigm. The ego has one paradigm, and that's the paradigm of the linear. The non-linear is just a different paradigm. From this paradigm seems unreal or outlandish, and to the scientific world not believable. To this paradigm, this viewpoint is equally untenable. Anyway, because the universe is a karmic unity, you could say that which is the infinite power of the unmanifest becomes manifest as the universe, creates a karmic field, let's say, within the absolute reality and infinite power of God, would be like an enormous electromagnetic field, and everything is included within it. When we explain the difference between power and force is something that goes from here to there and expends energy and therefore comes to an end. Power does not require any input of energy, is beyond time and stands there and holds all within its field without the requirement of any energy. And because it is just the field, everything in it aligns itself within that field according to that which it is. So if you're a little iron filing, then where you stand in this electromagnetic field depends on the strength of your charge, your shape, the negative and positive poles and where they are, etc. So what you have become by virtue of spiritual agreement, by virtue of the spiritual will, then has determined the charge on your spiritual body, which as it separates from the physical body will automatically gravitate where it is destined to be by virtue of that which it has become. By virtue of that which it has become, it will automatically adjust itself to where it belongs within the infinite magnetic field of the will of God. Yeah? Is that simple enough? Yeah? It does not require any arbitrary God or judgment day, because the consequence of that which you are is automatic as the consequence of the reality of that which it is. There is no arbitrary God who has to sit up there and wait till you get up there and boy, are you going to get it. It's absolutely not necessary. That which chooses and is attracted by hatred goes to the realms of hatred. That which is attracted by beauty and peace and love and divinity automatically gravitates to it. Is that an agreement and obvious? Yeah? Therefore, the judgment of God is absolute and absolutely perfect by virtue of the nature of creation itself. All of creation then, in its perfection, guarantees absolute justice. Nothing and no one will go to any place other than that which it already is. Huh? It's pretty clear, yes? Like a cork in water, then, each one floats depending on one's buoyancy and the density of the water. Huh? Salt water is denser. Therefore, one can refuse the sovereignty of God and refuse God and choose the lower astral realms. God doesn't force you to accept God, nor does God force you to the lower astral realms. People gravitate towards hatred because that is what they have chosen. We assume, because, a group in the 400s, we would assume that a run-down, degenerate-looking bar and grill with drunks lying around the place and vermin in the place and rats eating the garbage, that the people who go there would love it when they clean it up and paint it and put new drapes and get rid of the rats and disarm the patrons. And we all know that's not a fact. The new owner comes in, cleans up the place, new drapes, new carpets. The old crowd doesn't go there at all. They desert it. I remember the electric circus in East Village. That was the early 60s. And it was the beginning of the psychedelic era. and it was the in place to go. And Andy Warhol and all the elite intellectual artistic types went to the Electric Circus. And the groups that later became famous, they weren't famous in that thing. But that was the first psychedelic disco. And the walls had just drapes because they didn't have money for walls and stuff. It was hip, cool, and anybody went there. And after a year or two, I forget, some new owner bought it. They closed it up for about 2 months while they cleaned it up. Well, they cleaned it up. Now it had curvilinear, beautiful plastic walls and stuff, and nobody went there. The fact that it was funky was why it was cool, and how people liked it, you know what I'm saying? So they cleaned up the old Electric Circus, and Fred fell on his butt. Nobody went there anymore. It was no longer hip, it wasn't cool, nobody wanted it. All right. So as amazing as it would be to people in the 400s, there are people who prefer to be on the streets. And I'm in charge of a treatment center, and a lot of them, the minute you let them out, they will go right back to the very source of their own devastation. Right back, exactly, same lifestyle, same people. Just as the wife goes back to the man who beats her up, and she gets a court order of protection, and within 48 hours, she's back with him, and then he's beating her up again. And then, so it goes over and over. The person is attracted to that which they are karmically destined for. All right. So that pretty much takes care of some of the questions we had there, because it takes the view of God as judge. You might say the universe judges absolutely, but not in the moral, arbitrary, ego understanding of the word judge, which is an arbitrary. The idea of the judge, the punitive judge, comes from really the Old Testament. And the Old Testament itself arises from the tribal gods. You see, all the early cultures had tribal gods. There's the Roman gods and the Greek gods, and they all have great names, Zeus and Athena and all these various gods. And they were supplanted over time as life evolved. So some of the early scriptures still have these anthropomorphic gods who are subject to all the fallacies and foibles of the human ego. The so-called gods of many ancient cultures are nothing but exaggerated humans, subject to the same proclivities of the ego, jealousy and envy and hatred and revenge and vanity. But when you calibrate their energy, you'll see they're actually mostly the so-called gods of the lower astral realms. They're talking about the gods of the lower astral realms, who rule by vanity and egotism and revenge and anger and favoritism. So you're not talking about the God of the evolution of consciousness. You're talking about the gods of the lower astral realms, right? Freud said they're all projections from the unconscious. Let's see what we say about it. The gods of that I was talking about are projections from the unconscious. Resist. Okay. They also exist as realities and quotes in the lower astral realms. Resist. Oh, because they got projected there. Resist. Oh, I got it. Okay. All right. So they originated in the unconscious out of guilt, fear, anger, hatred, and all those things. And they're accepted as realities by a large part of society. A large part of society doesn't know whether God is it. Where's our other thing? A large part of society doesn't know which end of this chart God is at. Now, you talk about spiritual confusion. That's the one, yes. Large parts of society, and I say large parts, very large parts of society, think God is down here. I don't know what they think is up there. There's one religious group that thinks that to experience the Buddha nature is a demon. And that God is down here. So, I mean, if you can't tell the top of the chart from the bottom of the chart, you really ought to not try to proselytize others. I mean, you know. I mean, you can do damage to your own karmic potentiality, but to drag others along with you, I really am not. So proselytizing has never been something I've been interested in. Karmic propensity, then, means that as a result of whatever has gone on, you start from where you're at. Wow. Everybody has to start from where they're at, and where you are is from where you was. All right. So, the Christians who believe in a Christian culture, those who believe in karma, have usually been influenced by Buddhic things and by own personal experiences to a qualified karmic understanding of karma. That no doubt what you do in this lifetime is going to have quite profound consequences in the future, which may or may not include the choice to reincarnate. And the implied purpose of reincarnation is the chance to choose again, And many spiritual teachings do emphasize that this is a chance to choose again. I think, doesn't the Course in Miracles call it that? Yeah, it says, this lifetime is nothing but, I really have trouble. I must have some bad wire karma. What the Course in Miracles says about this is a fact, resist. People who incarnate now have chosen to incarnate, resist. Oh, they were forced to incarnate, resist. No, none of us are forced to. Well, I didn't know that. We were given an option to choose again, resist. Many of us choose to undo by re-experiencing what we did to others, resist. Yes. I know my own consciousness before this event that happened was one that would choose to experience that which I did to someone else because I didn't see any other way to undo it. So the guilt of that which I did was sufficient that I was actually willing to re-experience exactly what I did to that other person, you see. And I gave the example of not killing somebody that I should have killed. And going through a hernia repair without anesthesia as a karmic undoement of the fact that having run a sword right through him, I left him to die of his wounds instead of having the spiritual courage to kill him. In that case, I should have, out of mercy, put an end to it, but I didn't. So in his lifetime, I undid it. Let's see if that's a fact or not. Huh? Yeah. That's a fact, is it? Yeah, this is a fact. So one will get recalls like that, and you can do spiritual research. I think it's valuable to do karmic research to clear up any misunderstandings. One thing you can clear up with karmic research is self-pity. The idea that you're the innocent victim of all these vicissitudes of life. With a little karmic research, you will find you are not the innocent victim of all these vicissitudes of life. No, that you have really chosen this. Well, it's a lot easier to accept the consequences of your own actions. You say, out of my willingness to evolve spiritually, to be worthy of heaven, to be worthy of God's love, to experience the infinite reality of God, you can respect yourself that you were actually willing to reincarnate and go through what you've gone through again as a human being for the mere chance of undoing it and choosing better. So you can respect yourself for what you've put yourself through. And you certainly have undone a lot of bad karma. So the worse life has been, the better it is, huh? If your life's been dreadful, boy, oh boy, I don't know how you rate. Well, I earned heaven, I'll tell you. I've been through quite a bit. And so All right, so you can say if I chose this as an option, then why did I choose it? Because it says you're not forced to reincarnate. Don't have to. Don't have to. It's an option. We can choose it. If you could skip the childhood part of it, it wouldn't be so bad. This time, the childhood part was so boring, I don't know how I got through it. I thought children are awfully boring, and I used to look at them and I thought, God, they were so dumb. I mean, they play these dumb games, and I couldn't wait till I grew up. So I read Plato in the meantime while I waited to grow up. Because you weren't growing up unless you were this high, and I was only this high, so I just had to sit in a chair and read Plato by myself. But I thought childhood was quite boring. So there wasn't particularly anything in childhood I needed to undo. And the disasters didn't start till later in life. All right, so you can see you may get a different position about your physical life this time. It might give you a different way to maybe respect yourself instead of kicking yourself. Instead of kicking yourself for errors, you might say to yourself, you can recontextualize it, that this was a different way of looking at it, a different way of learning, a different choice. And I turned it down this time. This time you turned down great wealth, let's say. You lost your shirt in the stock market. Oh, gee, high-tech stocks are just not the way to financial heaven, I guess, right? So all of us live and learn, and this maturity that, so we try to gain what we can from this lifetime. So we can turn this lifetime, no matter what, into a plus, to extract that which is spiritually valuable out of every iota of it. A lot of times you can surprise yourself. The guy stole a lot of money from you. Let's say you discovered somebody's embezzled a lot of money from you. And you want to get even. Well, it helps to find out that karmically you embezzled a lot out of a lot of people, a lot of lifetimes, and it's payback time. That makes it a little easier to handle right there. And to see that it doesn't really matter. So the willingness to let every instant be the past, of course, closes the door to all regret about the past. And the way one's consciousness evolves then is the willingness to surrender everything as it arises, to live in the absolute radical reality of the moment of now. Means like listening to music, to let go of the last note and make room for the next. So each thing as it arises, you can let go wanting to change it, and the willingness to surrender this instant to God as it arises means you don't live on the front of the wave trying to anticipate the future, nor do you live on the back of the wave trying to cling to the past. As it is now, it is spoken. As it is now, it is done. As it is now, it's acted upon. And you let it be the way it was, huh? It's that simple enough. It's walking on the edge of the knife. To walk precisely on the edge of the knife is what allows you to go through surgery without anesthesia, because the instant you begin to resist the pain, it becomes excruciating. It's only when you completely and totally surrender to it, not call it pain, stop resisting, become one with whatever the sensation is without calling it anything, and all of a sudden one transcends it and the pain disappears, as though being transported by angels to a different realm. I wonder if that degree of surrender actually brings angels around or something. That's what happened, we said. Okay. It was a definite sensation as though one was being lifted out of the body by angelic beings. They were angelic because the exquisite grace, gentleness, and radiance of love was profound. As though one was being lifted out of the physicality, and the physicality was going through all this surgery and chopping off your thumbs and various things that were going on. And there was only a feeling of infinite peace and joy. So that surrendering, that intense surrender then, well, let's ask that again. I don't know, I need a different one of these things, don't I? The intensity of the surrender finesses the presence of God expressed as the angelic resist. Wow, didn't know that. Suspected it, but didn't know it for sure. So, you see, kinesiology as we use it is a constant learning tool. It's just a tool, that's all. It like confirms, denies, tells you in the wrong direction, tells you, yeah, it's like looking for Easter eggs. You're warmer, you're warmer, you're warmer. You know what I mean? You're warmer, no, this way, this way. And it sort of leads your investigation. Now, karmically, you're beset by certain problems and questions in your life. So they tend to press for expression and for awareness. The past lives that probably are of any significance in one's life, most people already intuit them. They will start out as a joke. Oh, some lifetime I must have so-and-so. Usually starts out as a joke. They don't want anybody to think that they believe in karma, so they say, well, some lifetime I must have been a pickpocket. I was a pickpocket in France at one time. Anyway, I sort of knew that all along. So you'll find that you would sort of intuit, or people will mention to you, you're like an old farmer, for God's sake, the way you walk around and look down at the ground, you just sort of knew. You've been a farmer a lot of lifetimes, you know what I'm saying? It's like going, oh, it's very close to consciousness. What's the value and the significance of it? The value and significance is that it may recontextualize your spiritual work in this lifetime in a way that is less painful, facilitate it, and broaden one's understanding of the evolution of consciousness itself. It's unlikely that you just came out of the blue, out of some kind of nothingness, and appeared on this planet calibrating at 4:30. I mean, that's just not a likelihood. Right? Not a likelihood. The other interesting observation is that without some kind of understanding of karma, there's no explanation of why it is that various individuals already have a calibrated level of consciousness at the moment of birth. Yeah. How come this baby's born at 2:30, this one's born at 5:40, this one's born at 70? How would you explain that? A fickle God or a careless God? I don't know. I just rolled the dice and some fell off the table. Little kids they were born with AIDS and have died of starvation by age 6 months. What kind of karma is that, huh? Yeah, born with a calibrated energy of 30, which is not far from death. They're born half dead to a family with no resources, no money, no food, and all of them have AIDS, and they're all in terminal cases of tuberculosis. If the AIDS don't get them, the TB will. Or the nearest warlord will have slaughtered them anyway, so. How explain this? How can you believe in a just God who determines all events as though he's arbitrary, and yet have people coming into the planet on all these various different levels, huh? So let's see. Let's ask again. I just want to show you how we do this, Karma is the explanation why children come into this world calibrating at different levels. So you see, you like intuit the next step in your own spiritual evolution. And you use consciousness techniques such as kinesiology to affirm or deny them. Why? Because you begin to trust your own spiritual inspiration. See, the presence of God within you expresses itself as spiritual inspiration, which is what leads you into spiritual pathways and attending lectures and studying books and doing mantras and all that. That's coming from a spiritual intuition, inspiration. It's not personal, so you can't compliment yourself that you're spiritually oriented, nor can you attack yourself that you aren't. Consciousness itself is impersonal. Everybody has it. Awareness is impersonal. Everybody has it. The presence of the self is ubiquitous in everybody. So it's not something you can rate yourself one way or the other. It's like you hear the call and you become responsive to it, and now you become curious about spiritual matters. You become interested in overcoming defects because your polarity is such in the gravity field of the universe of God that you are attracted to the light. So once one is attracted to the light, one is attracted to the light by virtue of all the spiritual decisions that have been made in the past, so that your karmic propensity now is to be attracted in this direction. Most people who are seriously spiritually devoted accept that as normal and think, well, isn't everybody that way? Doesn't everybody want to go to church and give up sin and become a better person and go to heaven? No. That's naive altogether. We see that 78% of the population prefers it the other way. They will consciously choose that which leads in the other direction. When given a choice, they will consciously choose it. That is also partly because of what they have been up to that point, so that you can't really berate anybody for what they are at this point, because what they are now is a consequence of what they have been. And to many people, it would seem that the option of a different choice is not open to them. If you're out at sea and shipwrecked at sea, it's not an option to drink pure water because there isn't any. And many of the adolescents I see who come off the streets, a better choice is not really an option to, it's not within their conscious options. You know, when you go to make a choice, you have a certain number of options. And these kids don't have these three options. You either fight and kill, or you're a coward and go down. So they've got one choice. They've got one choice. It doesn't dawn on them that they could leave their present environment. It's not a possibility. So it's almost as though the positive options themselves are earned. The positive option is not there unless you've earned the option of a positive option, you might say. Does that make any sense? All right, how about questions? Having answered all the questions of the universe, according to Ramana Maharshi, the seat of the heart is in the right side of the chest. I don't know, that's puzzled lots of people. And nobody's ever answered it satisfactorily. He said it was in one side of the chest. Don't forget, he talked about the sheaths, the 7 sheaths. He was talking about the various levels of the aura, which have different languaging depending on the spiritual tradition from which you're speaking, in the Far East or the Near East or wherever. Anyway, he's apparently talking about a heart within the heart chakra as expressed in one of the sheaths. So I'm not aware of what he meant by it, and it puzzled many of his followers. Many people asked, and I forgot what his literal answer was. Let's see, we'll ask it today. I don't know what the answer is either. What he meant was the spiritual heart resist. That the spiritual heart is positioned in a certain way within the etheric body resist. He's talking about the position of the heart chakra within the etheric body resist, and that it's not concordant with the physical body resist. All right. So he's saying it's not concordant anatomically with the physical body. I once saw that. I only saw auras briefly in my lifetime, and it was with a lady who knew how to see auras. And I said, I can't see auras. She says, oh, anybody can see auras. Here, sit down. And she described to me, it's a very famous person too, by the way, you know her name. Anyway, she told me how you see auras, and she said, you look right over the head there, and don't focus on their head, and you'll see. And then she showed me where to look and how to look, and by God, there was one. Well, I didn't know if it was just suggestion. Don't forget, I'm scientifically trained, and I know about suggestions. So I'm saying to myself, well, this is suggestion. So I thought I'll test her out. For one thing, when I saw this aura, it was like gray like this, and it was very lopsided. It was not auras the way they are in pictures, look like halos or something. This person's sitting there, and here's this gray aura, and it's way over this right ear. And I said, where do you see the aura? She says, it's way over his right ear. And I said, okay, I am seeing him. Well, your fantasy would be that everybody's aura looks very neat, like an artist's drawing right around the body, you see? But here was this guy's head, the energy field was way over like that. So I don't know, I'm just speculating on what Ramana meant by that. I don't think it was anything important. I forget whether he said to meditate on it or not, but I didn't get that it was of any critical importance. How can you verify the validity of your findings, such I suppose as in kinesiology or whatever, or in one's work? That's sort of the hypothetical asking the hypothetical, so it's not really answerable in a radical, logical way. So the experience of one existence is purely subjective, and there is no escape from subjectivity. So to ask somebody for what might be considered objective from a certain intellectual hypothetical viewpoint doesn't really have any reality, even if it was answerable, because the experience of myself, Susan, and the audience simultaneously is that we use a certain technique to verify the yes or no of various things. But to some degree, we already know the answer, and all we're looking for is some external verification for the purpose of demonstration, really, and for showing how this technique can be used to further spiritual progress and gain access to information. Don't forget the information that we talk about in these lectures and write about, etc. Most of it has never been known in the history of mankind, not known certainly in a verifiable way. Maybe some shaman had a vision of it, or somebody had a hallucination of it, but nobody has really contextualized it in a totally comprehensible way so as to make it assimilable and verifiable. So I think the value of what we do is, you see, if you get an answer that's outside the expected realm, or outside of even the possible, even outside of possibility, it requires an explanation. And occasionally we get an outrageous response. Well, it doesn't mean the response is wrong. It means that you don't comprehend it. A lot of times you have to completely rephrase the question. Sometimes the question is already begging the answer, and you'll get a refusal. It's funny, but consciousness is extremely bright. And when you think you're outsmarting it, you find you didn't get away with it. And many a time, we did it one time in front of an audience, and I've cited this example before, when we asked Carl Jung's energy is over 520, and we got a no. Well, we've done it hundreds of times. I know what Carl Jung's energy is. And she couldn't understand it, and I couldn't understand it. Well, we said it is. Well, he's dead, so it couldn't be, could it? It said no. When we said it was, we got a yes. So just phrasing one word. Carl Jung is over 520. Obviously, the answer is no. But we were careless because we've asked that question so many times. So you have to be careful how now, the whole thing has to be internally consistent. In other words, if you spent a few weeks with us and saw us do hundreds and hundreds of things, you begin to see a fabric of truth form itself, which is internally consistent. Now, at this time, we were going to sit this way and that way. Maybe we should have sat the other way. Never mind. Doesn't make any difference. At this time, I've done over 255,000 calibrations, 260,000, 265,000, 270,000, 275,000, 280,000, 290,000, over 300,000 calibrations, over 290,000 calibrations, 294,000 calibrations. Well, if you've looked at 294,000 rocks and examined them under a microscope, you begin to get a feeling for geology. What's shale and what ain't shale? I mean, you begin to get what. So just the sheer experience of it, I think, is interesting. When I first saw kinesiology, I had already gone into that infinite paradigm we call nonlinear, and which religiously is called the presence of God. So when I first saw it, I was already seeing it from a different paradigm of reality. The whole audience was within the linear Newtonian domain. What they saw was a local phenomena, and what I saw was a non-local phenomena. We both witnessed the same event. To me, it was obviously the answer, the non-local answer of the nature, coming from the nature of consciousness itself. And the rest of the audience thought it was the reaction of the body's physiology to a turnip. Oh, shit. Yeah, some people thought, well, they presumed, but it was very clearly a nonlinear, impersonal response. It had nothing to do with the questioner. It had nothing to do with the person who was being the subject. And it was obviously the connection between the invisible nonlinear domain and the consciousness of mankind as it expresses itself through the nervous system. So instantly I saw was infinite, non-local, impersonal, and was a response of consciousness itself to the presence of truth. We called it true versus false, but that is not correct. And I think in Power versus Force, we said it was true versus false, but in Eye of the Eye, we corrected that. It's not true versus false. It's true versus not true. There is no opposite to truth. Truth is either present or not. If truth is present, then you go strong. If truth is not present, because it has no existence. So that which is not real has no existence. Consciousness, therefore, does not respond to it because it is only belief system in your head with no reality. So there is no such thing in the universe as knownness. There's either yes or the absence of yes. That's a very profound spiritual understanding because it destroys the artifact of the polarity of the opposites. And we use as the analogy of that, when you throw the switch on, electricity is present in the wire. Electricity is either present or not present. There is no condition known as offness. So the duality of the ego is that off and on are opposites. There is no opposite to God. There is no opposite to truth. There is no opposite to existence. So when I hit the duality at age 3 and again later resolved at maybe age 60, of existence versus non-existence, the fallacy of it made me laugh. There is only existence. And you can see the absurdity of asking whether non-existence exists. Non-existence is not an option, just like absence is not an option, you see. Something is either present or not present. There is no condition called absence. You know what I mean? We can't send absence into this room and fill it up. After we all leave here, we'll send in absence. Absence has no existence. There's either here-ness or not here-ness, but there is no such thing as absence. But the ego's belief in that which is unreal is the cause of the human dilemma, that there is an opposite to God, that there is an opposite to existence. The nearest not opposite, the nearest thing to non-existence is oblivion. And that's to see that is to solve the ancient dilemma of the Buddhic fallacy. There's errors in all religions, and the one in Buddhism is the misunderstanding of the absolute infinite as void. And in its mistranslation, the void becomes a state to be desired and achieved by the pathway of negation. Actually, non-existence is not a possibility. Voidness as nothingness is not a possibility. Voidness is absence of form or content is the absolute reality. But if one believes that the absolute reality to be achieved is the Buddha nature as voidness, as though voidness is a condition, a reality condition, leads one into the state of the void, and when you leave the body, you go into oblivion. Then, because that's not a reality, you can't stay in it. Because you can't stay in it, you find yourself back at age 3 in a little wooden wagon stunned by the fact that you exist again. That's the fallacy of the Hinayana pathway, a certain branch of the Hinayana pathway. The misunderstanding that that which has no existence can exist as non-existence. You see the fallacy of it even within the realm of logic. But when spoken by a guru with gongs, shaved head, incense, sitting on a tiger skin, one assumes this is the ultimate authority. One worships it, deifies it, and not becomes sought after. God is non-existence. That's an impossible coin. You cannot get past that one until, what do we say, 8:50. At 8:50 you pass that doorway. The purpose of all that is to try to unhook the power of positionality, creating a duality which is the block to enlightenment. If you see that only existence exists, if you see that only heat exists, if you see that in the supposed gradations between light and darkness there is only the one, and that is light, and that darkness has no independent existence, then you're halfway to enlightenment, because those are the great obstacles. Any questions? We'll look at the 3x5 card. Oh, okay. Do go.
If consciousness is not personal, what does it mean we earn the chance for better opportunities or for better choices?
It's like consciousness is the field. Karma is still content. One has not escaped content yet. To go beyond karma means to have escaped the limitation of content. Consciousness is infinite context. It has no form, like the sky. Karma would be like a cloud, still has form. It hangs loose within the sky. It's within the sky. So karma then would be the consequence of one's spiritual decisions has an influence on the shape of the cloud. But consciousness is like the sky. The field of consciousness, which is impersonal, is unaffected by the cloud. But where the cloud goes in the sky will depend on its shape, size, consistency, humidity, barometric pressure, and many things, yes? You see, in the meditative technique to realize the presence of God, one goes back from identifying with the content of consciousness to the field in which, to the field itself, to realize that I am not the content of the mind. I am that upon which the mind is playing. See? It's like I'm the receiver and not the notes of the music. The receiver remains the same no matter what music is playing on it. You all of a sudden jump from identifying with the content, I am those thoughts, words, images, and memories, to I am that which empowers them to become known. So you become the knower of the field. You become the witness. You become, at a certain level, the experiencer. Beyond the experiencer is the witness and the observer. The witness and the observer and the experiencer arise out of an impersonal field. You can realize these things are impersonal because witnessing and observing is not within, you cannot shut it on and off at will. If it's who you were, you could shut it on and off, but it's not who you are. Behind the witness, observer, experiencer is an impersonal, all-prevailing field of consciousness itself. Even consciousness is not aware of its own existence except for the field of awareness. So you stop identifying with the movie and you begin to see, one can witness the movie only because that upon which it is being projected is formless. You withdraw your investment in identification of self as form and content of memory and experience. You see yourself as that which is beyond form, that you are the field upon which form reveals itself as form. You witness that the self is impersonal because consciousness doesn't shift no matter what you think about it or say about it or try to do with it. It's just there. Throughout the day, if one is awake, you're conscious. How do you know you're conscious? Because you're aware that you're conscious. And awareness itself is also impersonal. Awareness itself is also impersonal. So you go back through the substratum, you're going back to God manifest as existence, the awareness of existence. And there you transcend temporality because that quality which you sense has no beginning and no end. Eventually you get back to God not only as manifest, but as unmanifest. Out of the manifest, unmanifest arises. The unmanifest is traditionally in Christianity called the Godhead. Out of a Godhead of the unmanifest arises God as manifest, out of which arises the universe. Now that all makes sense then. In meditation, one can withdraw from the identification with the movie to see that it is, except for consciousness, there would be no awareness of the movie, and that consciousness is what prevails, and the content of the movie is evanescent. Therefore, as one spiritually evolves, one is less and less prone to investing in that which is transitory, because it's the transitoriness of that which is temporary becomes increasingly obvious. Every acquisition someday later will be a problem in disposition. Everything you acquire, someday you will now have the task of disposing of. So you spend all day acquiring it, it's going to take you 2 weeks to dispose of it. All has to be reboxed, sold at garage sales, transported, wholesaled, retailed, willed to somebody. But in other words, that which is transitory becomes less and less of value. That which is permanent, therefore, spiritual work itself becomes more and more value because one realizes its permanency. Once you've made a certain spiritual decision and see through certain spiritual illusions, that which you see is permanent. That which you see has a profound effect on one's karma. That becomes incorporated into... There is a Korean, I think, who wrote a book called Omniology, and he gave sort of the, you might say, the anatomy of that which is of the nonlinear, as paradoxical as that may sound. The spirit body has within it a sort of like a karma body. It would be like a computer chip. So the spirit then is like a computer chip, but the computer chip of a different domain in which everything leaves an imprint throughout all of time. So when we do kinesiologic research, we can go anywhere in time, anywhere in place, and we can pull out information that nobody has had access to. Nobody's ever had access to most of the things we... In fact, on this stage, a lot of times we've asked things nobody's ever asked and nobody's ever gotten an answer, nor if they got an answer, would they have any way of verifying that the truth of that answer? Huh? We asked, did Jesus Christ ever have previous physical incarnations? Did anybody ever ask that? You ever hear of? I never heard of it myself. Came out of the blue, and it came out of the blue to ask it here and now. You know what I'm saying? And we thought about it, and I don't know that it necessarily means anything, except it's another piece in a puzzle when you put it all together about your knowledge of Krishna and Buddha and Christ and all the great ones. You begin to get a sense of what the spiritual reality of that entity is and how it impacts your life and how it impacts all of society. What's the next question? What's my sense of Ken Wilber? He's a very bright guy. Ken Wilber wrote Holographic Universe, right? He wrote, anyway, the most best known is the Holographic Universe. My guess would be he's in the high 400s as a consequence. Ken Wilber, we have permission in front of this audience. This is over 460, 470, 480, 485, yeah. He would be high 400s because that's very advanced understanding he has of the nature of the universe and how it operates, that it is a holographic unity. And he also escapes the trap of causality, I think. We talked in our last lecture about causality. We haven't mentioned it again this time. That because this is on this side of the universe, therefore this is where it is on this side of the universe, but this is not causing that to be over there. Do you understand that? In a holographic universe. It has to do with the nature of, you see, things do not come about as a result of the ego's belief in causality. They come about as a result of the manifestation of creation as it evolves into the providence of perception in what seems to be sequential. As creation unfolds, nothing is causing anything. You understand? It's beyond causality. Each thing is what it is. And that completely answers. There's no questions to be answered. Each thing is totally that which it is, and it requires no cause. So the cause is really a tautology. It's really the hypothetical absurdity to say what is causing this. It's the linear Newtonian paradigm, which presumes an invisible thing called cause, just like it presumes behind thinking this there's a thinker, behind doing this there's a doer, behind acting there's an actor. There is no actor behind the actor, nor is there a doer behind doing this. There is no thinker behind the thinkingness. There's no speaker behind the speakingness. Speaking is speaking of its own as the unfoldment of the potentiality, the infinite potentiality of the evolution of humanity in consciousness as it is expressed in this entity. That's a fact, is it? Thank you. Phew, I'd hate to have found that that was not right and repeat it with a correction. I'd have to recall what I said. But it is a fact. Because each moment as speakingness is speaking itself, which is what it's doing, there isn't any speakerness behind it. There's no speaker behind the speakingness. The speakingness is speaking itself. Because the expression of life then at this instant in the gravity or field of this audience, manifesting through this entity, speaks back to you as the speakingness because it's all happening spontaneously. You understand? Everything is happening of its own as an expression of that which it is. Which is why I don't sound like a bell. Because the voice box is what speakingness speaks through, see? But there is no fantasied, and therefore there's no cause behind what you see as the unfoldment of God as form. I promised you this morning I would unearth the fallacy behind Thomas Aquinas' proofs of the existence of God through tracing back cause to first cause. One of the famous arguments, there's four of them, one of the most famous ones is tracing back cause through a sequence of causes to find the prime cause. The idea is if you trace back a bunch of billiard balls, you'll find the billiard ball that starts the whole bunch going, except when you get there, there ain't no billiard ball there. There's a cue. Oh, a cue stick. You don't find another billiard ball. So if you go from cause C, cause B, cause A, and look for the primary cause, you're not going to find any primary cause because there isn't any primary cause there. There isn't any cause. What you find is source. So the fallacy of the argument is you think in an infinite sequence that you're always going to find another one of the same thing. No, what happens is it changes quality. Changes quality. Let's take water. We'll use the thermometer. You see, at 212, water is a gas. Below 212, water is a liquid. Below 32, water is a solid. Well, you've got solid, liquid, and gas, and yet at the same time, it's all H2O. The essential nature of water has not changed at all, but its quality has changed considerably. Its quality. The significance of the calibrated levels of consciousness is because it's not just quantitative. It's true, these are logarithms. But at each stage here, these energy fields which dominate consciousness change quality. And therein lies both their blessing at the top side and their curse at the lower side. Because this may be only 2 points lower than this, but this one will kill you. It changes its quality. So it's the change of quality, not just the quantity. So the logarithmic numbers denote levels of power. But as they change quality. So the nonlinear cannot be, accurately described from the viewpoint of the linear. I think in the book I just wrote, I compared you cannot compare lead with platinum by comparing their atomic weights, because the quality of platinum and lead are completely different. Lead is relatively inert, whereas a milligram of platinum can catalyze tons of ore. You can get tons and tons of ore out of one just milligram of platinum because it doesn't get used up in the process. Lead is inert. You can put lead someplace and it doesn't do anything for a few hundred years. It's slow on the uptake, lead is, you know. Any questions out there? That things change their quality as they go up or down the scale. Yes?
I'm interested in the stability or the variability in moving up and down the scale, say in a day's time or a week's time.
Your question is, does the level of consciousness fluctuate throughout the day?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, we said level of consciousness is set by spiritual decision. It's really the spiritual will that sets it. So consciousness is a little more stable than that. Emotions tend to come and go, but your level of spiritual commitment hasn't really changed. You say, well, I'd like to kill that guy, and he deserves to get beat up, and I hope he gets his. And then you say, well, would you do that? Well, not really. So you were spinning off an emotion, but that's not who you really are. So we inherit an emotional body, which becomes known to the world as your persona, your personality, emotional body, but it's not the real you. It's sort of the evanescent play, interaction with the world, making learned appropriate responses, etc. But it's not the real you, because the real you is when your life depends on it. What would you say in this situation? And you'd say thumbs up or thumbs down. Well, whether you vote thumbs up or thumbs down is going to make a big decision. So if the gladiator out there, the crowd says thumbs up or thumbs down, if you vote with the thumb down, you join the karma of the crowd who chose his death for the sheer thrill of watching him bleed all over the sand. Done thousands of times. You, on the other hand, could be the one who puts his thumb up. Huh? If you do, you may get the fury of the crowd, so you're in a hell of a place. The crowd will kill you for putting thumbs up when they all put thumbs down. But if you put thumbs down, you join their karma. So very often, not infrequently, you're up against a spiritual or moral decision like that. All right, so that which interacts with the world is not intrinsically the self, but it certainly reflects it. That which is activated on the stage right here is to the persona. It's the learned part that knows how to verbalize, interact, express appropriately to get ideas and thoughts across. And it is not innately the same as the reality of the self, which has no form and frankly doesn't say anything. If I ask my inner self what does it think about all this, it doesn't think about it. It doesn't consider it thinkable. Thinkable. Doesn't have thinkability. On the other hand, if something varies somewhat from the absolute truth of whatever this consciousness is here at the moment, it instantly lets you know. And the difficulty, as we said, up to 600, the Kundalini energy pouring up your spine is exquisite, and joy is exquisite. You're surrounded by infinite beauty and harmony. Everything happens with synchronicity. When you think something, it appears. Huh? It's heavenly. And at 600, one is just immobilized by it. All of a sudden, the sense of the presence is so profound that how the physicality persists is strictly up to the world, actually, because at that point, there's no interest in it. It seems to go, it'll stop breathing too. It stops all activity, and the bliss is all prevailing. And even breathing stops, and life goes right on. If the universe, if the karma, I suppose, of the universe and the karma of the individual so decide, then the breathing will start because somebody comes by and stimulates it to breathe or gets you to eat again or something like this. Otherwise, you just leave it. And I think we found what? Of those who hit 600, 50% do leave the body. Only, half the people say, just let it fall over, and it's wonderful. Whether if it stays or it doesn't stay is totally irrelevant. Then beyond that, usually it stays there, but sometimes it goes up to 700, or sometimes it'll start from down below and then hit 700, and suddenly the consciousness 700. That's Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj. And I presume Muhammad, I don't know the story of Muhammad. Muhammad was only 700, but 700 is the world of the sage and a profoundly enlightened state. And usually at 700, it just stays there. At that point, you don't leave the mountain, and you don't have to wear many clothes. You can sit on a tiger's skin and eat icky food off a palm leaf. Or you can get a job back in New York City, I suppose, and get real. My sense of humor is funny, It just says, though, but most bizarre things. And people will say, you laugh at your own jokes. And I tell them, they're not my jokes. I never heard them. They just come out of the blue. They hit me as hilarious, frankly. I don't know where they come from. Some of the funniest things have just come out of the blue, and they just knock me over because I have a sense of humor. And it had nothing to do with me. I didn't make it up. They're not my jokes. I didn't make them up. They just came out of the blue, spontaneously. So everything happens spontaneously. And then from around 700, it usually doesn't change. I don't know why it continued to change in this instance, but from that point on, it is not blissful. It is frequently extremely painful. And one's sensitivity to the slightest outness is exquisite. And in case it bypasses your notice, the aura reacts with intense pain, which was quite distressing. And the pain often was severe and lasted for many hours and days sometimes, until you could find out what the outness was and correct it, and then it would go away. But the next slightest thing, it would start it. And I was lamenting that one time. And we were in Korea, and Susan pulled a Korean, a Buddhist Bible out of it. See, in Korea, in the hotel room, you open the drawer, and there's not just a Holy Bible, Christian Bible, but a Buddhist Bible, So she pulled out the Buddhist Bible, and she opens it, flips it open, and the Buddha was saying that he was racked with pain and beset by demons, and his bones felt like they were cracked. Instantly, I felt better when I heard that. Wow. Wasn't that a great moment? That was a great moment. And you see, even as I was speaking, so I'll share with the audience, the reality of how this all works, because there's nothing mysterious about it. As I got near speaking this morning, I felt a twinge out. There was something I could pick out, I could tell, sense that it was in the third eye of the atmic body. There was something on the third eye of the atmic body, resist. It was a luciferic energy, resist. It had to do with the spiritual ego seeing a gain, resist. The spiritual ego was attracted to the power of absolute certainty, resist. Right? The spiritual ego was attracted. It knew that the absolute power of absolute certainty is considerable. And the spiritual ego instantly went for it, and I felt it go for it. It like wants to seize the power inherent in being a transmitter of absolute certainty. Like the remnant of some entity wants to hang on to that or come back through, reach out towards you from where, I don't know. Let's see. See, we learn instant by instant. I'm just showing you how it actually works. That spiritual ego was personal resist. So that's the remnant of this personal spiritual ego resist, which is attracted to the thought of power resist. Okay. So you see, the spiritual purification is continuous. The more you learn, the more astute you become at perceiving its nooks and crannies, and you're after it all the time. After a while, it's like the princess sleeping on, can feel the pea under the mattress, kind of a sensitivity. It's like the instant it comes up, you know there's something out about it. You instantly look to see what it is about it. From your knowledge of the ego, one could presume what is probably operating, and then with kinesiology, verify if that is so, and choose the opposite. To be grateful for the absoluteness of spiritual certainty. To choose that as the alternate option. Yeah? So that's the Luciferic energy, I think. As you evolve, it's like some test comes up with it, you see. Go ahead.
Is there an end zone in all this?
Is there a what?
End zone.
Was there?
Touchdown.
What?
Is there a touchdown on this? Is there, goal?
Oh, touchdown, yes.
We're going for the kick.
Is there an absolute end to spiritual evolution? In my understanding of the nature of God, no. That the evolution of consciousness is a foreverness. It's a foreverness, all right? We'll find out. We have permission to ask it to resist. It is a foreverness resist. Yes, it's a foreverness. So there is no end in the sense of the limitation of beginning and end, which are concepts. Beginning and end are concepts of languaging and a definition. And therefore, that which is infinite would not be compatible with that which has a beginning and an ending. So within reality, there is no endings because there are no beginnings. Yeah? So all measurement then is an arbitrary positionality of the ego, which says this is a beginning and this is an ending. Huh? When is the ending the beginning of the next sequence? You know what I'm saying? It would just trigger the next sequence.